Let's fast forward to the mature athlete. He's passed his arbitration eligible years. Now he runs into a problem, a PED, a biogenesis sort of issue. You've had, without getting into client confidence, some experience in that area. How would you advise in representing a professional athlete that's confronted, let's start with a congressional investigation, a SOSA or a PEDIT or an AROD? How do you counsel them when they're in a crisis mode like that?
Well, everything is very case specific, but the first thing that you have to do is you have to evaluate the risks and rewards of any strategy that you're going to employ. And representing a professional athlete is much different than representing, let's say, a CEO of a national company that's under congressional investigation, because a lot of that player's value, both to the club and to himself, involves public relations, the value of his brand. And so you have to balance protecting him legally while also still protecting his brand. And sometimes those two matters or those two issues conflict. Because there are certain things that you might do legally to shield your player from certain things, but given that he is a public figure, you rely upon, or he relies upon, his brand for his livelihood. Sometimes you have to make adjustments in your legal strategy to account for the value of that brand.
Would you say in a SOSA or a PEDIT or an AROD, I think you worked, you told us on all three of those to a certain extent, honesty is the best policy, beginning, middle, end?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, if you're going to have your client testify in any forum, you can't knowingly, as a lawyer, sponsor perjury or false testimony. So when a client is placed under oath, you have to be very careful. And certainly the truth is always the best option, and that's the one that we've employed with my clients.
I know you didn't represent Clemens, but do you think his going and pursuing it was a brand damaging or a brand enhancing sort of trajectory?
Well, ultimately, I thought his strategy was brand damaging. At the point that he decided to continue to fight the criminal charges and the way that he pursued them, ultimately, all that evidence spills out into the public eye. And the fact that he was acquitted, I don't think changes the public's opinion with respect to whether he used or did not use performance-enhancing substances. So I think the war that he engaged in was somewhat misguided.
Yeah, Pyrrhic victory, perhaps. Yeah, and I guess that goes to when you're managing a brand, which you also do, and the superstar athlete. Let's go forward into the biogenesis. So we've dealt with the congressional situation, Pettit Sosa, and so on. And now we're into the biogenesis scandal, and you told us you represented as many as 8 of those people who were involved. At that point, and you didn't have A-Rod, but he continued to fight it, even sued the Players Association at one point. In managing a brand, where do you just say, enough is enough, I'll take my penalty and I'll move on?
Well, ultimately, that's what all of my clients in biogenesis decided to do. They accepted 50-game suspensions under the joint drug agreement for their alleged transgressions under the joint drug agreement. But look, it's all particularized to the individual facts. The players that I represented, all of them presented somewhat unique circumstances. I represented, for example, Nelson Cruz. Nelson Cruz was in the final year of his contract with the Texas Rangers and was going to be a free agent in 2014. Had Nelson decided to appeal his suspension, there's no way, or it would have been extremely unlikely, that a decision on his 50 games would have been made before the beginning of free agency, which would have affected his value in the free agent market. And tack on to that, any club signing him would run the risk that he'd be suspended for 50 games if he didn't prevail in his appeal. I also represented a number of minor leaguers. And those minor leaguers were eager to, break spring training camp in 2014 in an attempt to make the big league club. Had they fought their suspensions, it would have interfered with their ability to compete for a major league job in spring training in 2014. So all of my clients presented somewhat unique circumstances, but they all led to the same path, and that ultimately was accepting the negotiated deal with Major League Baseball for 50-game suspensions for all of them.
What about the criticism? That's a great answer, but what about the criticism of Ryan Braun? Oh, I'll take maybe 65, but that's okay. And other players are now reacting against a Johnny Peralta. I'll take 50 games, but now I'll come back and sign a big deal, a big multi-year deal. And they're clamping down, both the association and Major League Baseball, even into HGH testing, for example. Are you in favor of that?
I'm not in favor of human growth hormone testing. I don't believe that it is a scientifically valid test at this point. I still think more work needs to be done on it before it can be proven to be scientifically valid. So I was not in favor of HGH testing. Add on to that it's invasive. It's a blood test, which was the first time that the players had agreed to blood testing for performance-enhancing substances. So I was not in favor of it. With respect to other players' criticisms of Melky Cabrera, to some extent, to Johnny Peralta, that have been punished for their transgressions and ultimately signed multi-year contracts. Look, there is a penalty prescribed under the joint drug agreement for first-time violators of the program, and that's a 50-game suspension. And they accepted their penalties. That's what the penalty was in the joint drug agreement. There's nothing in the joint drug agreement that says they should be penalized contractually or anything else. So that's what the collective bargaining agreement and the joint drug agreement say. They serve their penalty and they have the right to continue on in the game.
Let me just ask you about that for our audience. This is a strict liability regimen, if I'm correct. So in other words, it's not a defense to say, oh, I didn't realize that which I ingested could be on the prohibited substance list. Is that a fair summary of how the strict liability regimen works?
As a general rule, that's right. Now, for example, if you do take a substance that is on the NSF list, which is the approved list, and ultimately one of those substances turns out to be tainted, you would have the ability to fight that on the basis that there's no way you could have known or should have known that there would have been a prohibited substance if that substance is on the NSF list. And that NSF list is circulated to all the trainers in Major League Baseball. The players are made aware of it. So if you took something like that and you triggered positive, you would have the opportunity to challenge it before an independent arbitrator. But if you go into, let's say, GNC and you buy a protein shake and that protein shake isn't on the NSF list and you ingest it and it triggers a positive test, the strict liability will kick in and you'll be held responsible.
How did Ryan Braun and his attorney, David Cornwell, get his strict liability first time overturned? Was that a chain of custody issue of some kind?
Yeah, Ryan Braun was a little bit different. There was a chain of custody issue with respect to Braun's urine sample. Instead of being immediately placed in a FedEx package and sent to the lab, because the FedEx facility closest to the field was closed, it was a Friday night, the collector kept it in his refrigerator over the weekend and then sent it in on Monday. And that was a violation of the chain of custody rules that exist under the joint drug agreement, and ultimately Braun was exonerated. I would note that I believe that was a Players Association argument with respect to the chain of custody.
Okay, let's just finish up, Jay. You've been great, wisdom and source of knowledge here, but let's just talk about the rebranding of an athlete that's been through a crisis, a superstar player like a Nelson Cruz. Is it just about winning, like Al Davis says, just win, baby? Is that what it is, really, on the other side of whatever it might have been? And sort of in tandem with that, could an A-Rod ever repair the damage to his reputation to be able to push a product again?
Well, whether you're able to rebuild your brand or push a product may be two separate questions that need to be answered. Look, America forgives. It's something unique to our culture. We are a forgiving culture, but nothing is better to rebuild a brand than performance. If a player can come back from a situation like a biogenesis suspension and play well on the field, you'll find that people embrace that player. Take Nelson Cruz, for example. Nelson Cruz accepted his penalty, served 50 games last year, and now he's going to start in the All-Star game, leading the league in home runs and RBIs. So Nelson Cruz is well on his way to rebuilding his brand. But the other thing is that America also likes to see contrition. And I think that's what's negatively affected Ryan Braun. Ryan Braun was not contrite with respect to the way things were handled, and I think that negatively affected his brand and continues to negatively affect his brand. Can Alex rebuild his brand to pitch a product? I think the answer is yes. You know, look, Alex is unique. He is one of the elite athletes ever to play the game. My representation of him, it was somewhat funny. I had never represented an athlete of that caliber, of that magnitude. You know, I'd represented Sosa, I'd represented Pettit, but Alex was different. The public treated him different. And you know, Alex will have an opportunity to take the field again in 2015. And if he performs well on the field, if he is contrite, there is a means, there is a way for him to rebuild his brand.
Let me just ask you the famous Hall of Fame question. Should any of these people who admitted PED issues be admitted to the Hall of Fame? Pete Rose can't get in. He gambled. How is this different?
Well, I think gambling in baseball is different than the use of performance-enhancing substances. You know, when you look back at the steroid era of the 90s and the early 2000s, I think that you know, there is something to be said that everybody in, you know, or at least a large portion of the players were using performance-enhancing substances, and you are to be judged in Hall of Fame voting against those that you played against. And so for those players that allegedly used back in the 1990s and the 2000s, I think they should be judged against their peers who were also probably using, and they should be admitted. With respect to guys that used for one time or a limited period of time, I think you have to take that into account and contrast it with their performance over their entire career. And if ultimately you determine that for their entire career they are deserving of a Hall of Fame vote on the basis of their statistics, they should be in. It should not be an automatic prohibition to getting in, which is really what it is right now.
Yeah. Is Craig Biggio somebody who should be in the Hall of Fame eventually?
Well, I think Craig Biggio should be in the Hall of Fame. First of all, there were nothing but accusations with respect to Craig Biggio. Nobody ever caught him. He never tested positive. He was never found in possession of steroids or anything like that. So, you know, the fact that some people surmise that he was using performance-enhancing drugs is absolutely, it's not fair. It's not fair, and the fact that he's not in, you know, is criminal.
Should Derek Jeter, last question, should Derek Jeter be a first ballot Hall of Famer?
He should be a unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer.
Amazing. The captain, he's here in Cleveland playing the Tribe. So hit his first home run here back in his rookie year. Jay, we want to thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add to tell our audience about what it is to represent the professional athlete in Major League Baseball through and including his mature years?
Yeah, you know, look, the one thing that I would say is that there's no magic secret to what I do for professional athletes. You know, I am a litigation lawyer. I've been trained in litigation, both in white collar and complex civil matters, and I merely apply those skills to the representation of professional athletes. And for those that are looking for a career in sports law, I strongly urge you to get a broad base of legal skills and then try to apply it to the sports law job of your dreams.
It's just complicated, commercial, sophisticated, semi-criminal work that happens to be for superstar athletes. That's the way I describe it, right? So be skillful and you'll be successful. It's really what you're saying, I think.
Absolutely.
Great answer. Jay, we can't thank you enough for being, we have your bio up for our audience, and I sure thank you very much for being with us today.
Anytime. I enjoyed it.